Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. I'm Gunnar Enos, and welcome to another episode of the Logical Gamers podcast. Tonight, I am joined by Mr. BlankaKong and Mr. Esoteric Skills, and tonight's topic is going to be on the controversial yet empowering for some concept of review bombing. So, quick notes for anybody that doesn't know what review bombing is. Basically, review bombing is usually directed towards platforms like Steam, where you have user-generated reviews from people who actually own the game. Steam is pretty good when it comes to reviews. They let you know if a person has received the game as a gift or if they are a verified purchaser, which means that Steam account used a credit card to purchase said game that they are reviewing. So Steam reviews, as opposed to PlayStation and Xbox and Switch reviews, tend to be more highly regarded because they're more open about, well, these are the people who are reviewing it, and this guy received it as a gift, so, if he's praising the game, he doesn't have, he might not have less skin in the game than a guy who spent $70 on the game and saying it's mid. So, anyway, the Steam reviews have been used as a vehicle by the gaming community at large to express their either extreme satisfaction with the game or their extreme dissatisfaction with the game. And when the term review bombing comes into play is not necessarily when a game comes out and it's brand new. It could be when a game does something and it upsets the larger gaming community. They use the review forums, they use the review forums as a platform to basically protest their grievances with the game. So, we're going to have an article for you guys to link, which kind of is a springboard for this topic. This is an article coming from the Game World Observer, and the title is Take-Two warns investors that review bombing may lead to a loss of revenues and reputation harm, in quotes. So basically, this is Take-Two letting their investors know that review bombing does have an impact on how a game is perceived. We're going to see that with other games that we'll talk about in the podcast. I have some other examples that aren't Take-Two specific. But the one that Take-Two is referring to is the Grand Theft Auto trilogy. So for those who don't know, a couple months ago, maybe a year ago at this point, Take-Two released a updated version of the GTA trilogy, which is GTA 3, Vice City, and San Andreas, all on one comprehensive package on modern consoles. The problem with that was that a lot of the animations were very scuffed. They were very poorly done animations that made the PS2 versions look superior somehow, and a lot of the licensed music that GTA is known for was no longer there. So the collection was a quantifiably inferior product to the original trilogy that was on Steam. But Take-Two being Take-Two, the original trilogy was no longer available for sale. It was delisted. So you no longer had an option to buy the original trilogy collection. Your only option was to buy the new one. So people took to Steam and the Steam reviews and review bombed the living hell out of the trilogy, basically, and in the comments cited that the reason they're giving it a negative review is because this is an inferior product and they no longer have the option to buy the other product because it was delisted. So it was basically a form of digital protest. And that's what review bombing is in a nutshell. And companies like Take-Two and others have started to notice it, and they are recognizing it because it does have an impact. It does have an impact. I don't know. It's not going to tank a game, but it will have a measurable impact on their game's perception and their image, so to speak. So that was a lot. I just wanted to cram some stuff into my opening monologue just to give you guys what a definition of review bombing was and kind of like the article that facilitated this topic in my head. So, gentlemen, initial takes on review bombing. Did you know what it was before I just explained it? Did you not? What are your like knee-jerk reactions to it, and just general opinions before we get into the conversation at large? I
Oof.
throw it to you guys.
Okay, so I think Kong would be more knowledgeable in this particular topic than I am because I had no idea what review bombing was until I read the article. I know typically uh, gamers who are dissatisfied with whatever content or whatever game is being produced does have a tendency to, uh, make their dissatisfactions outcried in through like social media and whatnot. But I didn't think that they were actually doing it through like review bombing through like Steam and rating the game poorly, based upon certain aspects that they're not happy with. Um, with that being said, with the whole knee jerk reaction, I think that it can be potentially a double edged sword in a sense because although it is absolutely effective, because if a company like Take Two is expressing concerns about review bombing, then it has to have had quite an impact on what's happening within their company, within their brand. Um, However, where the double edged sword comes into place, what I'm a little concerned about is some gamers also have a tendency to take one small aspect of a game and then pretty much blow it out of proportion and then go go through the most extreme courses of action to shit on a game. You know what I'm saying? So that's one of my concerns about it. It's quite effective because chances are it may cause companies to make the necessary adjustments needed, um, in which to appease their audience. However, my biggest concern is people who are looking at it from a subjective perspective as opposed to an objective perspective. Like, are you review bombing because the game isn't running? Which this is a perfect example to what I'm saying. Like, they were complaining about the game being inferior to the originals. A lot of things weren't up to snuff, according to the gamers that purchased the trilogy. So I can understand that. However, review bombing for like instances like, oh, this character's dress is too long, or like there's not enough of this aesthetic in the game, and blah blah blah, this and the third. Although I may agree, in some aspects that like the whole censorship portion of it is like, well, I do agree with it in some instances. However, I don't think it's worth review bombing to that point. I think that you can complain about the game, but I think it needs to be a little more tasteful, in my opinion, if that makes any sense.
Not that I get what you're saying. You're saying it's more so not a uh that some gamers can use it as for the not necessarily wrong intentions, but they could use it as a way to air out grievances that don't matter in the grand scheme of things.
Yes, like minuscule things and like minuscule expectations. Like, overall the game runs well, it functions properly. You're getting a lot of content, you're getting a lot of hours into it. Like, okay, here's a perfect example. If they were to review bomb Elden Ring for it being too difficult, you know what I'm saying? Like, you need to improve your gameplay in order for you to have a better experience with the game. I don't think that there should be review bombing for a game that functions properly. It runs at stable frames, with the exception of the goddamn dancing lion, because that was frustrating. That's understandable. It has a lot of content. You have hours of gameplay potentially, depending upon how much you play the game. So to pretty much grief bomb that game would be like ridiculous in my opinion. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like the comparison when it comes to review bombing for I said grief bombing prior. Excuse me. Review bombing for a game like GTA, and then review bombing for a game like Elden Ring. Like it just doesn't, like the scale, it doesn't balance, if that makes any sense to you guys.
No, I get that. I get that. So Kong, thoughts, concerns,
So
questions.
before questions, so before I get into the into my like personal takes, and your take made sense, Esoteric. I don't disagree with what you said, but I do want to like dive into it. But before I do that, I just wanted to go through some of the points in the article that is going to be linked. Article states, in the risks relating to our business and industry section, the company emphasized the importance of maintaining the high ratings of its games, saying that it could be difficult for players to find titles with lower scores and make them less appealing to the audience in general. And here's the interesting part regarding review bombing. In addition, we may be subject to negative review campaigns or defamation campaigns intended to harm our ratings. Take-Two noted that this may lead to a loss of players and revenues, additional advertising and marketing costs, and reputation harm. Take-Two is no stranger to negative reviews. Most games in the NBA 2K franchise sit at mixed reviews on Steam, with the latest installment in the series, 2K24, having mostly negative user score, under 30% positive reviews. Users typically criticize these titles for inequity or inequality between PC and console versions. Despite the negative reviews, the NBA 2K remains one of the best-selling video game franchises of all time. According to Take-Two's annual report, its lifetime sales reach 149 million copies globally, largely thanks to its chart-topping position on consoles. So, this is a great example of review bombing not working. So, because NBA as a whole is an appealing sport and thus an appealing video game to most people, to most like non-gamer gamers, right? The more casual gamers, people who maybe just play just sports games or even just play just basketball games, they're not looking at reviews. Like, they're not looking, oh, well, let me find a good basketball game. No, there is the one basketball game, and more often than not, they buy it every year. And NBA is known for like really egregious, I would say predatory and even disgusting business practices in their I'll just call it a loot box system, their VC distribution, and how in my opinion they fuck their players over by not allowing them to transfer their progress from one year to the next, or even just the lottery system and its existence in itself, I think, is pretty egregious. But people buy into it, and that game has seen extreme success. And if we're talking about EA, the same could be said about their Madden franchise, as well as their formerly known as FIFA, now known as FC franchise, which is their soccer games. Those games don't need to appeal or worry about review bombing. However, review bombing does work on, I guess, less casual games that require a little more, gamer skill, so to speak, right? And so when they talked about Grand Theft Auto Trilogy, I was interested in the game because I'm a big fan of that era of Grand Theft Auto games, the PS2 era Grand Theft Auto games. I think they're the best ones. And I was looking into it, and I remember talking to Zeta about it, and he was like, "You're gonna play that trash?" And he was like, "I think you need to do more research before jumping in," because I was gonna buy it for surface value. I was like, "Oh, okay, collection of the GTA games, great. I could play it on my next gen console, cool." Right? I didn't even like research it until he said something, and I looked into it, and like Gunnar had mentioned in the beginning, the game was it was not just nerfed in the sense of the music copyright, which I could kind of understand, but it was nerfed for images. I remember there was like a racist white character who had like the Confederate flag on his t-shirt or whatever. Like, they took that stuff out, which, is that a reason not to buy the game? No, but it does kind of eliminate the authenticity of what the game was, especially a zany game like Grand Theft Auto with ridiculous characters. That sort of thing, just that was like seasoning to like the game's charm, even though in today's climate and how sensitive people can be, it might be, untasteful, and I understand that, but it's a product of its time, and I think nerfing it and censoring it, while I can play it, and I wouldn't have noticed that if I had just played it normally, right? Like I that would have slipped right under my radar, but like when I see that stuff, it just kind of like, what else did you censor, right? It just starts to, it's a Pandora's box kind of a thing. So the biggest reason why I didn't pick it up, the trilogy, was because of the performance issues that they were mentioning. Like, the game is available on Switch, and it runs terribly on Switch, at least in that launch window. I don't know about now. It's been 3 years since that came out, and I never bought it. What I ended up doing is, before they took it off all digital platforms, I bought the trilogy collection, the original ones, on my PS3, and now I have it there forever. But I also went out and bought physical copies of Grand Theft Auto 3. I still need to get Vice City, and I have a copy of San Andreas that I picked up a few months ago, because it's like I want to play these games at their peak, right? Not just from performance, but also just from the contents of the game. And unfortunately, a lot of companies do such a shit job at porting. It's such a lazy, we're just going to port the game. We're not even going to fucking test it. We're just going to throw it out there and just hope that it does well. If they had give it a true remaster, like really build it from the ground up, but also still respect the source material, much like Resident Evil 2 remake, Resident Evil 4 remake, Dead Space remake, like those are really good remasters, right? Those are worth investing into because they're modernized in terms of graphics and controls, but still respect the source material. You feel like you're playing the same game, and Grand Theft Auto Trilogy didn't do that. A lot of the graphical issues, like the rain effects in Grand Theft Auto 3, somehow look worse now than they did on PS2, which is like, how the fuck does that happen? Well, it happens because they didn't test it. They didn't look into it. They just ported it, and it fucked with some of the code, and it didn't upscale properly, and so it looks like shit. And so there's that. As far as my personal opinion, I kind of side with Esoteric's opinion of review bombing. I get it when people review bomb for like small reasons, like, oh, they censored this character's sex appeal, or oh, they censored this character's like vulgar language, and that's not a good example. Another example of another remaster is the Tomb Raider trilogy that was released digitally, I think earlier this year, where there were, I think they censored it after releasing it, which is funny. So there are pictures of Lara Croft on in a locker room or something, like lewd pictures. Like, there's nothing revealing, but it's just like her in bikinis or whatever. They took those out after the game at launch, and I remember people being really upset about that. Which, again, it's such a small thing, but it's like, I get it. I get why they do it for any reason. It's because if they do it for that reason, then it's like it's a whole like you give them an inch, they take a yard saying. Like, the moment you give them a little bit of it's not a big deal, they'll take it a little further and a little further and a little further, to the point where every game is the same and nothing is creative anymore, which I think that's where we're headed anyway. So I get it, but I do agree that if you're going to review bomb, it should be for a more noble, legitimate reason. But that's a subjective thing, right? Like, what I think is legitimate may not be the same for other people. So, that's my take. If that made sense, and I kind of rambled there, but I also wanted to incorporate the article. An example of review bombing not working, which is the NBA example.
So just a quick thing before you go, Dad. Just to kind of like talk about the Lara Croft thing. Just some context on that one. Funny enough, after the game got review bombed, they ended up adding those pictures back into the game, and I think it was Bluehole, I'm not sure, the studio that remastered the game, said it was a unintentional error with a recent patch.
Sure,
to the
buddy.
game.
Sure.
Okay.
Whatever,
that
whatever
for
you
what
say,
you
pal.
mean. Right. So you can like make the argument that like gamers won because they got the 2D pictures of Laura Croft in a bikini back. But I just wanted to add that they are technically back in the game now, and
I
that is
didn't know
the
that part.
exclusive
Thank you.
game. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know you go down.
In other words, we had to just write some bullshit public eye
But
speech.
one can make
You
an
know.
argument that is review bombing having an actual physical effect on a game. It also shows how things can be taken away when you change a 1 to a 0 and update something, and then it's like poof, gone, never happened. But that's a different conversation.
Absolutely. You know, the best way to hurt any company, in order for you to, be heard as the consumer, is to hurt their pockets. You know, once they see a decrease in revenue, that's when they proceed to be like, oh, well, maybe this was the bad idea. You know what I'm saying? Which, kind of sort of makes sense simply because when numbers increase in terms of revenue, that means that according to companies' perspectives, we're doing something right. When it's in a negative, that means we're doing something wrong. But to your points, Kong, which you eloquently stated, pertaining to the NBA 2K4, 2K24, and like the what the hell you call them, Madden, and those other games or whatnot, I think one of the correlations as to why there isn't a negative impact for them pertaining to review bombing is because they monopolize those sports titles. Like there isn't any competition for NBA 2K24 or the 2K series, and there isn't any competition for Madden or FIFA or what they're known. I forgot what their new title is now. So they have a monopoly. If people who are who who plays those games, who purchase consoles for those games, that's their only option. So of course they're going to buy it because they have nowhere else to go. And also pertaining to the Confederate flag situation, when I said, people who are review bombing for like aesthetics and censorship, there are some caveats to that, right? Because if you were known to see a game the way that it was on, like, say, the PS2, like Grand Theft Auto on the PS2, it was known to be a certain type of way. Gamers who've played those games back in those days and they're excited about a port or a remaster coming to current gen consoles, there's a certain expectation whether the game runs well as the aesthetics of the game. You know what I'm saying? So that I can let that go. Because it's like, well, there was a Confederate flag back then, so why would you guys want to change that now? This is part of the, as you said, the charm of the game. This is something that I enjoyed. My stipulations was pertaining to like new characters, like new IPs that are coming out, and people are complaining about, oh, there's not enough chest showing. Oh, they're wearing baggy clothes, things like that. I can understand your grievances pertaining to the overall aesthetic of the game. However, it's a new IP, and if that's the artistic vision that the person went with, then so be it. It doesn't have anything to do with the functionality of the game, which I also have to preface that whatever issues you as the gamer have with a game, that is perfectly fine. However, we have to be a little more responsible with how we are utilizing tools such as review bombing when we're discussing like games and whatnot. We have to be a little more objective in the type of reviews that we're getting. Well, not getting, giving. So that's what I was trying to state. And
So
convey to
I
you
have a
guys.
pushback argument for you, but before I do that, Gunnar, was there anything you wanted to interject?
Well, yes. I get what you guys are saying about when it comes to review bombing for what's the proper word? Things that might I can't think of the word, but things that might mean more to one person as opposed to another. So, it's not on Steam, but I'm just gonna throw out a hypothetical. So, everybody knows Stellar Blade. Game got like more controversy than actual gameplay, right? Overall, I think in this group, or at least me personally, the game was okay. It was not $70 okay. It was like $50 okay. It was a good game. Reminded me of an old school PlayStation 2 hack and slash, which is not an insult to the game. But I can only imagine that game's review score if it was on Steam. That thing would be sitting at like a 1.5. And it wouldn't be because the combat's boring, the voice acting's terrible, the game has a huge stuttering problem, things that you would expect traditionally would warrant a negative review score. We all know what the negative scores would have been about. They covered up her outfits, they censored the swimsuit, they removed the gore, and it would just be 20 million reviews based on that. And if I'm a normie and I don't know shit about any of that, I just go, oh, that's a neat game. Reminds me of Devil May Cry. And I look at it, and the first thing I see, because the way Steam does their reviews, is that if it has a mixed or mostly negative, it shows up as yellow for mixed and red for mostly negative. So for those that know marketing, those are colors that are immediately going to draw the eye to that location. So if I see red text that says mostly negative, my knee-jerk reaction is not, well, a normie's knee-jerk reaction would be, let me not go deep dive and see what people are saying. It's like, oh, this game must be shit. Oh, this game is trash. Or this game must not run on a toaster, let alone a high-end PC. I'm gonna skip it. I'll wait for a sale and they fix it. So I think that's from like publishers like Take-Two, that's what they're looking at. They're looking at that knee-jerk reaction from a normie who is not on social media, is not on these game sites, is not watching YouTubers. They just their impression of a game is the initial score on the Steam website. That determines whether they buy the game or not. And as far as the gamer perspective goes, good. That's what they want. They want the knee-jerk reaction of, I'm not going to buy this game because it must be bad, as a way to send a message to the powers that be that we don't like this. And one could say it's holding the game hostage, so to speak. We'll remove our reviews if you add our tits back. For the case of Stellar Blade, if it was on Steam.
Yeah, I could see that.
Like it's on one hand, it's these fucking people are ruining the perception of our game, the game that we worked hard on, and the game that, at least for the executives, we want money from. And then on the other hand, it's like, no, you did something we feel is wrong, and if that hurts your sales, even by a modicum of a percent, because in the case of the NBA, didn't really hurt their sales, didn't hurt their sales at all, because it was on console. Right? Steam is a PC-focused platform. On console, I wouldn't be surprised if Sony just deletes every single one-star review and keeps only a 5-star. And you're only allowed to put stars. You're not allowed to put a reasoning why. Whereas Steam, you can put, I hate this game because XYZ reasons. So, like, Steam is the only platform where you can leave a detailed review of why you dislike a game. So, but from the gamer perspective, it's like, good. If it hurts your sales, good. Correct this, and the review will reflect the correction, which could help your sales from those normie people who just go on Steam, and it will make your game look good. So it's like a weird, we're fighting against the man, but on the flip side, we're potentially diminishing a game's reach to the general public, because if they see a negative review, they're just not interested, or they're going to hold back. So that was just my point, the duality of the review bomb.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with your positioning, in that it's basically like it should be used in a. It's like the only tool that we have at this point. It's the only. It's the only kind of power we have besides just not buying. Like, you could just say, and we say it all the time, okay, you vote with your wallet, just don't buy the game. Well, you're one person. But if enough people write negative reviews or badmouth a game enough, that's going to hurt the reputation, which is going to hurt its potential to sell to other people, because people are going to hear this opinion. And human beings are very influential by nature. So once, there was like, this is off topic, but it's related. I forget the name of the experiment, but there was an experiment that the military had conducted, I think in the 70s or 80s, where they had they had a panel of people, like it would be like 10 people, and then they would show like a math equation. This is not what they showed, but this is just to simplify the example. So the experiment was just to see how many people would willingly agree with the wrong answer if enough people said the wrong answer. So it would be like 2 + 2 = 5. And then the first person out of 10 would be like, yeah, of course. And then the next person would be like, yeah, sure. And by the time it gets to like, let's say the fourth person who isn't the plant, let's say person 4, 7, and 10 are like legitimate test subjects, and everybody else is just like a part of the gag. Those people will kind of look around and question their reality. Like, wait a second, does 2 + 2 = 5? Like, like they know that it doesn't, but just to kind of conform to everybody else's kind of opinion, they'll agree. And I think that they found, and this I might get this wrong, and I'll see if I can find the study, I'll link it in the description, so you guys can, those listening, you can look into it. I think it was like 10% or less from their experiments would actually go against the grain. A very large majority of people would conform to the group thought, because it's like, I don't want to stick out, I don't want to stand out, I don't want to be different, even though I know I'm right. I feel like I'm doubt. It's creating doubt in my mind, so I'm just gonna go with the flow. And so
it's some flip world. If you're wrong, now you look like an idiot.
Right, exactly. So that for sure it has an effect, which is why review bombing is so effective when it comes to games that aren't just bought off the shelf without any sense or thought. And that's clear. And I'm not trying to bash at like people who play sports games, because I have a lot of family and friends who play these games and enjoy them, and that's fine. Like, I don't want to like poo-poo on their parade, but a lot of these guys will take a lot of abuse from the publishers and developers, and I don't think that's right. But there's only, there's nothing I can do about it. All I could do is just kind of tell people my opinion and hope that it has an effect. Plant the seed and hope that the tree grows and bears fruit. That's all I can do. But review bombing does work on pretty much anything else, like action adventure games, RPG games, select shooter games, maybe not so much Call of Duty, but maybe some other stuff. So I agree that it is effective, and I also agree with Esoteric's point of like it should be used tastefully, but that depends on who you're asking. And it is a double-edged sword in the sense that people who review bomb a perfectly fine game will affect the future prospects of that particular developer, because now their game didn't sell as well, and so that could result into a studio closure or a cut in budget, which, if you can somehow, cut reality in half and just see the outcome of see the two outcomes of a particular action, like they could have made another great game if you didn't review bomb this particular game. There's no way to know that definitively, but like that's something I think about, because it's possible, right?
No.
So yeah. To push back on Esoteric's previous point about like review bombing new IP games, right? And I was gonna bring up Stellar Blade. I'm glad Gunnar did, so I don't have to. I don't necessarily disagree with the review bombing newer games because they're new IPs. I don't think they should be exempt. Not that I think you think that they should just be exempt from all negative criticism, but I don't know. Like, I think about games like Forspoken, for example. That game doesn't look good, right? Like, it's not. It doesn't look terrible. Well, maybe it does, but like, it doesn't look You know, it's not like a
They 3 million or however the budget was.
well, we're not.
Well, well, no. I'm not saying that you should not review bomb new IPs. What I'm saying is that, again, in the overall scope of things, us as gamers, or whoever's doing the reviews, just need to be cognizant and objective about what it is that they're reviewing. Like, we can all unanimously say that Forspoken was an ugly game. It did not look good. It wasn't appealing, at least from my personal perspective. However, I was looking at it objectively in the overall basis. I wasn't looking to see, oh, well, was the new character tits hanging out, things of that nature. You can still judge something based off of the aesthetics, but let's be reasonable about it, and just like with the whole Stellar Blade thing, I was a little annoyed that they presented the crazy gore in the demo, and then they kind of dumbed it down. But is that a make or break aesthetic that would cause me to not play the game? Me personally, no. But there's a lot of people that is. And instead of like looking at the overall scope of things pertaining to Stellar Blade, where the game was pretty decent, the combat was good, at least I enjoyed it. The counter system, the many different things that they had us like scavenger hunt for to tell the story, the characters, things of that nature, I enjoyed. So it's like, am I going to let this small little thing out of the many things that were positive, cause me to review bomb the game? Absolutely not. So I'm not saying that no IP shouldn't be review bombed. If they're bad, they're bad. But let's be a little responsible with our power. You know what I'm saying? That's all.
No, I don't. I hear what you're saying, and maybe I misunderstood a little bit. But like, just to kind of reinforce my point, and I see what you're saying. Like, it's not that new IP should be exempt. It's that we should be a little more, like you said, reasonable with what and why we're review bombing something. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay,
exactly.
So with for Forspoken, for example, like for me, the main character, I thought she was whatever. Like, she was she's very bland looking. Like, there's nothing exciting, or like if you compared her to what's another female character we could look at? It's easy to say Eve from Stellar Blade, but like something a little
Lightning.
Okay, sure. Compare her to somebody like Lightning from Final Fantasy 13, or to Jill or Claire in the more modern Resident Evil games. Those characters look way better and are way better designed, and also have like a smidge of one could say maybe sex appeal to them, which is a part of the female appeal in general. Like, there needs to be some type of sex appeal, right? There just is. If there's an action adventure game that features Bob from Tekken 7, for those who don't know, is just like a really fat white guy who happens to know kung fu, but he's like he's grossly fat. There's nothing attractive about the character. And no, I'm not homo, but I just got to put that out there. And then you look at Kratos from God of War. Which game are you going to pick up? Like, obviously you're going to pick up God of War. Just from looking, like, you can know nothing about either game and be like, whoa, I kind of want to play with this buff guy with the axe and the beard versus this just fucking fat dude or whatever, right? And so that's not that I'm saying Faye from Forspoken is equivalent to Bob, but maybe she is to some. But like, that's, some people did have that criticism that the Faye from Forspoken didn't have sex appeal, but any appeal really. And so it did get I don't know if it got review bombed, but I know that like there was a lot of criticism for just like the main character.
Yeah, I don't know about review, but it just got really bad reviews because I think it was just like an objectively bad video game.
True. It is a bad game by today's standards, but a lot of the criticisms I saw before the game came out were about how she looked,
yes,
and the voice acting and that sort of thing. And that example, I wouldn't blame people for review bombing. So that's just an example of like a newer IP that really under-delivered, that I feel would be, I would justify review bombing. I was like, yeah, go for it, bomb the shit out of it. But that was just like my pushback. It was a minor pushback, but pushback to Esoteric's original point.
So
Go ahead.
wouldn't? Oh, okay.
I was going to transition to the rest of the
well,
article, but if you have something related, then we can do that, and then
just what? Yeah, I think this is like one example of a review bomb that is kind of justified, and it has nothing to do with the aesthetics of a character, bikinis or non-bikinis. Um, Helldivers 2. Helldivers 2 was, I'm going to say was because it's lost a lot of their player base as of late, and it could be because of this reason. Helldivers 2 back in like early 2024 was like the hottest game. It was the new hotness. Everybody loved it. And it had co-op servers between PlayStation and Steam. A lot of PC players were on it. And what ended up happening when the game came out, it had a rough server launch, which kind of killed it from our group because we're all about, I don't want all my games to be online only. But
Yeah.
and it was having issues, getting on the game and playing it. But according to Arrowhead Studios, yeah, those are the guys that developed it, it was always going to have a PlayStation sign-in requirement, even on PC. And it didn't have that because they wanted to get people to play. Because they knew if people were going to have a hard time playing it, it was going to affect sales. People were going to drop the game. They're going to have low player count. Not good. So they skipped the sign-in for a good couple months. And then they basically sprung it on people where it's like, okay, sorry, unfortunately now we are going to have to require a PlayStation sign-in in order to play Helldivers 2. Now, the reason that was a problem for a lot of people is, I don't know if the audience knows, but you will know now, is that in a lot of countries, a substantial amount of countries and territories, because Puerto Rico is included in this, even though it's part of the United States, you cannot make a PlayStation account. For whatever reason, whatever laws or local jurisdictions, you cannot make a PSN. So if you are in Puerto Rico and you want to play Helldivers, you can't because you can't make a PSN. Now you could say, well, just lie, right? Just say, yeah, I'm from the continental United States and it's all good. You could, but then because of Sony's terms of service, if they find out you're from Puerto Rico, they can instantly ban your PSN account. No appeals, no questions asked, insta-ban.
Yep.
So,
Your IP address too.
right. And whatever you bought on that PlayStation account, sucks to suck, you ain't getting your money back. So people review bombed the shit out of Helldivers 2, and the most, the largest contingent of the negative reviews was the fact that they were accusing Sony of lying, Arrowhead Studios of lying, and basically saying that these countries now are locked out of a video game that they paid for under the pretext that they were always going to be able to play it. So for me, I think that's an example of review bombing for an actual legitimate reason. Like, this isn't because, my Helldiver, they shrunk her cup size. No, this is, I'm in Puerto Rico, for example, and I bought Helldiver 2 to play with my friends, and now I can't, even though I spent $60 on this game, because Sony decided they wanted to actually enact their PSN requirement. So I just wanted to put that example of like a recent game or a recently relevant game that was review bombed for a reason that I think was like a justifiable, objectively good reason.
I would absolutely agree with that. It makes a lot of sense, because it's not affecting just that one person or whatever. It's affecting everyone who's unable to play it. Like, let's say you had a friend who you met through Helldivers who was like really effective team player. And then they lived in Puerto Rico and they can't no longer play the game because of, Sony's restrictions and requirements for you to create a PSN. Like, it's very scummy. Like, why would you? Well, I mean, we already know why, but basically to have people play a game without that restriction and then out of nowhere, out the blue, enforce it, unless, which I don't have any knowledge of, unless it was in the terms of service, because, people don't really read that for games. They just go to the accept. Unless they stated that within the terms of service and you hit agree, completely understandable.
So yeah, it was like the Arrowhead pointed that out, that it was in. So when you buy a Steam game on the side, it'll let you know if you have to agree to like a EULA, which is a
Yeah, EULA. That's
yeah,
right.
which is like a third party agreement. So like, if I want to play Dead Space 3, I need to link my EA account to play Dead Space 3, even though I'm playing it on Steam. So that was there. That was there in the beginning, but they waived it because there were such problems that we didn't want to add. There was problems with getting on the game and playing it. We didn't want to add another hurdle for people by requiring them to make a PSN, because then that's going to hurt. If like I have to have a hard time making a PSN, plus even if I make it, I can't get on the game because the servers are just unstable. Most people are just they're gonna give up. They're gonna throw their hands up and go, I'm not interested in this game anymore. So they waived it to allow people to come in and basically keep the game populated. So people's complaints was like, well, obviously the game can run fine without a PSN. Why are you now requiring it? Knowing Sony has to know this, knowing that a large portion of the world, to be frank, is now going to be shut out of playing this game after they bought it.
Well, then, yeah, if they, had it in the EULA and then they waived it, then it's their responsibility to honor and maintain that waiver, So that's definitely a good reason for them to review bomb. Absolutely.
And to this day, that stipulation has not been removed. So if you live in Puerto Rico, for example, you cannot play Helldivers. And because of that, I'm not saying solely because of it. I think it's a combination of things, but I will attribute a decent chunk of it. Helldivers lost like 90% of their population on PC. Like the game is nowhere near as popular as it was. Could it be a lot of things like content droughts and balancing changes that the community doesn't like? Sure, that's a factor as well. But when you physically remove large portions of the world from playing your game, yeah, that's going to affect your player count. It just is. So, I just wanted to cite that as a more recent example of a game that has been affected by a decision that they made, and review bombing, may or may not have played a certain percentage of the negative perception of the game. So, just another example. I know.
That was a good bring up. I'm glad you brought it up because I did want to talk about Helldivers too, but you pretty much covered everything, so I don't have to touch that anymore. I do have one more example that's a little older, but it's a different type of example, and it just showcases the kind of never-ending war between companies and their player bases. But before I get into that, I just want to read the last bit of the article. So this is right after the NBA stuff. Of course, one of the most infamous cases in the Take-Two's history was GTA The Trilogy, which received an average score of 0.5 out of 10. 0.5, that's less than 1, from players on Metacritic at launch, although the rating has improved to a 1 out of 10. Since then. The collection of GTA remasters remains one of the lowest rated titles on the platform of all time. The main reason for such a low score was the quality of the trilogy itself, rather than negative review campaigns or defamation campaigns. Players criticized almost every element of the remasters, including performance, graphics, new models, and a ton of bugs. This last paragraph is unrelated, I think, but I'm not going to open this can of worms, but I'll just read through it. Going back to the 10K filing, Take-Two also said the development of generative AI may present operational and reputational risks, including social and ethical issues. No kidding. The company added that the use or adoption of third-party AI technologies into our products and services may result in exposure to claims of copyright infringement or other intellectual property misappropriation. The whole AI stuff is we've done topics on it before. I don't want to bring that up now. It's just a part of the article, but fuck AI. AI is going to be the death of so many things. But anyway. That's hilarious. A 0.5 to a 1. Rip. Rest in peace. The other example I wanted to bring up was Gran Turismo 7. So Gran Turismo came out. Let me see. Let me just get my information here. Came out in 2022, and was review bombed on Metacritic in March of 2022. Well, actually, no. I think it came out earlier. I think it came out in February, and it was review bombed a month after because of the updates that the game received. Now, when the game first came out, Gran Turismo fans have been waiting for a Gran Turismo game for a long time. The last Gran Turismo, official Gran Turismo game was Gran Turismo 6, which was on the PS3. So Gran Turismo technically skipped the entire PS4 generation. We did have Gran Turismo, the prologue, and Gran Turismo Sport, which was like a VR game, and it wasn't as good as people wanted it to be. It was kind of a filler title. So Gran Turismo came out, I mean, we're talking more than 10 years difference for a racing game, which is like, wow, considering Forza comes out every fucking 2 weeks, there's a new Forza game. It's crazy that Gran Turismo took so long to come out, but whatever. It came out, and Gran Turismo fans loved it. It was the handling, the graphics, everything about the game was perfect. And modern gaming knocked on the door and said, hey, want to introduce these new business practices to your game? How about loot boxes and whatever, right? So they introduced the store function, which was required in order for you to unlock certain cars and certain features or whatever, certain customizable features. And I mean, if you think NBA was bad, this was somehow worse. So let me just read through the little description here. Gran Turismo 7 was review bombed on Metacritic in March of 2022. Following updates made to the game, it received the lowest Metacritic user score. I could say that.
Yeah, that's a tongue tie. Yeah.
For a game published by Sony. Users expressed criticism towards its focus on microtransactions, including the real-world cost of certain items and grinding. Further negative reactions targeted reductions to the amount of in-game rewards, as well as an outage that lasted 30 hours, which barred the use.
Oh, I heard about that.
Which barred the use of most of the game's modes, which is why I don't like online-only games. The same month, developer Polyphony announced they would implement future updates to make progression fair and compensated players with free in-game currency. So, to give you deeper context, there were people who would spend money. So, like, they had a roulette system. Watching people play this was, like, rough. So, it was like, they would show you, like, it would be a loot box, right? So, it would open up, and they would give you a screen, and it would be, like, 3 pedestals. And one pedestal will have, like, 2 coins, which is, like, nothing. Then, like, a big bag of money, of coins, a ton of, like, in-game currency, and then, like, a special car. And then it would, like, rotate like a fucking roulette. Do. Which one are you gonna get? Which one are you gonna get? And almost every time, people got the worst of the 3. That happened, like, 85% of the time. So people have reported to spend tens of thousands of dollars to get certain cars. And the joke, or the meme, was people are spending just as much money in real life in the in-game version of the car than they would on the actual car if they were to purchase it in real life.
That's wild.
It was fucking ridiculous.
That's ridiculous. That is ridiculous.
Gran Turismo 7, there you go. So the reason why I brought that one specifically up is it received review bombing after its launch, after being received well, after its launch for new features added to the game. That, I mean, obviously I'm not going to get any pushback. I think that's the most justifiable reason to review bomb a game. However, it is a war tactic for the developers to kind of skirt review bombing because they got those day one sales, right? And that first month and a half that it was out, it was receiving glowing reviews, and which affects, the game's future success. And so once they had a certain amount of money, I guess, they're like, okay, now we're gonna fucking ring them out for every dime we can get out of them, and we're gonna add these new features into the game, which is super fucked up in my opinion. So that was my last.
Oh,
that was
no,
my last
big
like
time.
review bombing example. But I wanted to give you guys a chance to respond to that.
Well, in a nutshell, that is really messed up. Um, the good thing about leaving reviews is that there isn't a time limit, because I think that these businesses would take advantage. Like, let's say Gran Turismo, they did what they did, right? And then there was a time restriction in which that you can leave reviews. They would have did all of that, right? And then waited for the restriction to end, and then proceeded to add those new additions to the game, right? I think a lot of companies would follow suit if leaving reviews were like, if leaving reviews, you basically had to, god damn it, leaving reviews if they had a time limit on set on them. Like, that is really scummy right there. And I'm glad that everyone was thinking objectively and was like, well, we did enjoy the game. However, since you guys implemented this new mechanic, we are going to review bomb because we don't like loot boxing. So that's my take on that.
No, I mean, much like the Helldivers example, I think that's another example of, in my opinion, justified review bombing. And I'm glad you mentioned that, Kong, because that's a thing. These damn investor class and these execs, they always come up with more and more scummier ways to fuck over their sheep, their cattle, as they probably see us. And that's becoming more of a thing. Like, releasing a game and having it get all these positive reviews, and then maybe a month or 2 months afterwards, flipping the script and adding a microtransaction store or adding microtransactions. Like, I don't have any examples off the top of my head, but Gran Turismo was not the first one to do that. There have been other games where they've released in a state that had positive reviews. People liked the game. It ran well. It played well.
Latest example of that would be
And
Tekken 8. Tekken 8 did the same thing.
they did. It didn't
So-
have a. I know they have a cosmetic store.
So they added
Yeah.
new store features. Like, the store wasn't really fully available at launch, and when the game came out, I think so. The Tekken 8 example is just the latest example of like that kind of practice. It's way less egregious compared to Gran Turismo, in my opinion. I feel like most people would agree with me on that. But the practice is the same. So the game came out. It was glowing reviews. Everybody loved it. I bought it at launch and I enjoyed Tekken 8. I thought it was good.
Same.
I still have it. Still plan to play it. And in the future, Heihachi's going to be dropping soon, so maybe I'll pick it up again. But they didn't have a fully functioning in store yet, and they launched it. I think a month or a month and a half into its launch window, and they were charging, I think, $4 or $5 for like legacy costumes for certain characters and stuff. And so a lot of people complained about that. But to me, it's like I was like, this is not a hill I'm gonna die on, because it's like, a costume is not a character, and buying direct content is not a loot box or a random chance. So, and then $5 versus however much I would spend on a gacha basically is like not even comparable in my mind. So I let it go, because it's like, whatever. Like, if I really want this Jin costume from Tekken 4, I'll just pay the $5, like, whatever, or I'll just live without it. I don't care. But like, the car in Gran Turismo could cost me $5, or it could cost me $5,000, right? It depends on my RNG. And I think the RNG was rigged for that game to fuck the player more often than not. And so,
Right, you're on some Vegas.
yeah, so it's like it's the same practice, but varying levels of like egregiousness. So
Yeah.
But
Okay.
But also to, like, I'm sorry.
No, go. I was finished with my point. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, to basically to piggyback off of that, it's two differences. Like, the content in Tekken just has pure aesthetical value, right? Whereas in Gran Turismo, that car has functionality value. It probably handles better. The speed is, much faster. The torque, it has all these different components associated with it, which will overall allow the player to have a better experience. So that just makes it even more worse because you're blocked behind certain mechanics
Well,
for your
it's
overall
even worse
experience
than
of
that,
that game.
dude. Because I think there are certain color schemes locked behind the roulette system. So like, if you wanted a certain car in a certain color, you'd have to roll for the car and the color, I think. So it's fucking it's bad. So it's like, I hear what you're saying and I agree with you. Like the Tekken example is like, it's all cosmetic. Like the costume, it doesn't change the character at all except for the look, and which is, whatever. Like if you're just playing the game, then you're just playing the game. Like who cares really? And if you really, if it matters that much, then you just pay the $5 and call it a day. But yeah, the Gran Turismo example is as if Tekken had did it with characters. Like if you had to roll to get a character instead of just having them all unlocked or just playing through the game modes and unlocking them like it was back then, and you had to like roll with real money, it's like, brother.
He said, I know you wanted Eddie,
My
but
brother in Christ,
you get Oscar.
what are we doing here? But that's the difference, and this is my last point, and then we can wrap up. That's another distinction in player base. So FGC fighting game community players will cause a riot for anything. Anything. You do anything to a fighting game character, below fighting game character or franchise, they will burn you at the stake. They hold fucking fighting game developers fully accountable for everything, small and large. While
Yep.
people who play NBA or sports games, or in this case, Gran Turismo, they're a little more, I'm gonna say, submissive to like unfavorable or predatory business practices for whatever reason. I don't know if it's like a personality thing. I don't know if it's just just a volume thing. There's just more players in this pool than this pool, so it kind of dilutes the perception. But that's something to note too. It's like the player base kind of dictates what's okay and what's not okay, even though in another genre or in another like side of the spectrum, it's like fucking heresy, right? So that's just something I've always like noticed. I'm like, wow, like I would watch videos and stuff about the Tekken 8 stuff, and like people were like fuming for like $4 for a Tekken skin. It's like, really? Like, but then I would look at like Call of Duty, and they're charging $20, $25 for like skins in a first person shooter. It's like, well, what the fuck? Like,
Yo, get your Gundam skin in my FPS.
Yeah, they have like WWE wrestlers as skins now. That was like the latest thing. I was like, fucking eye roll. What the hell are we like? What are we doing? Okay, sure, it's whatever, right? But like, that's the dichotomy there between like the different kinds of gamers. There's like not a hierarchy, but like just like a spectrum of like tolerance to this kind of business practice, and both sides are very different. And I don't think I fall in the middle. I think I kind of lean more to the intolerant side, but like I'm definitely not anywhere near like that other side where I'm willing to plunk down hundreds or thousands of dollars on like cosmetics. That's fucking bananas to me. I could never do that. I'm not a gambler. But anyway, that was my final thought. I don't know if you guys have any closing thoughts before I kind of take us home.
Well, all right. Hey, so my closing thoughts on it is, I don't really have a problem with review bombing. Like I stated previously, I think, especially on the Steam platform, it is really the common man's only real way of showing displeasure on a level that's more than this game didn't have the gun I wanted, so it sucks. It's ass. Or they nerfed my character. its ass. Those people you can kind of filter out. It's like, all right, you're just butthurt. I get it. I've been there, but this is not a valid criticism of the game. But, you know, games where they censored, characters, say censored voice lines, while on the spectrum that Kong was talking about, that might not mean anything to a certain gamer. That might mean everything to another one. Like for me, I have a different opinion on the cosmetic things. Not getting into that because that's a whole topic in and of itself. But so there's different perspectives, and review bombing is kind of the only way the common man can show his displeasure on a platform where it's going to have the most eyes on it. Because if I leave a 1-star review on the PSN store in regards to Stellar Blade, for example, that shit's gonna get lost. Sony might even just make it conveniently disappear. It's not gonna mean shit. But Sony as a platform has proven to say, hey, we just put the game on our storefront. We're gonna let the reviews speak for themselves. Sort it out. If anything, Steam will basically curtail reviews and say, look, they would just let the consumer know these reviews may not be indicative of the performance of the game, so we're gonna show them here. These are reviews dictating does this game run on a PC? What kind of graphics card, CPU, GPU do you need to run it? Those might be reviews that other people are looking for, not, oh my god, they did XYZ thing, they're horrible. So, but anyway, just to wrap it all up, I think review bombing or showing your displeasure for something on a review is good. It should be supported, and you as the player, you as the consumer, at the end of the day, you got to do some due diligence. Just because you see that mostly negative review score, don't try to control the knee-jerk reaction to turn away. Maybe read the comments, see what's going on, and then at the end of the day, formulate your own opinion and go, you know what? That's not that big of a deal, or it is a big deal, and act accordingly. So I support review bombing. I support leaving unbiased reviews, and just do your due diligence like you do when you buy anything. You don't buy the first car you see, hopefully. But that's my final thoughts.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with everything you said, Gunner, as well as Kong. Review bombing can be effective. You got to be responsible. There's a lot of power behind it, especially when it's strength in numbers. So definitely be responsible. And also, I think a suggestion would be for Steam to kind of mitigate, not so much mitigate its effectiveness, but to allow people to kind of scathe through as to why people are review bombing for a particular reason, would be to maybe implement categorical features. Like, for example, there could be, what is your reasoning behind leaving a bad review for this game? And you can select whether it's mechanics, whether it's aesthetics, functionality, et cetera, and that way it will be more of more honest feedback in a sense of the person who's looking at the reviews to make a more a much better decision. So if they were to implement that, I think it'll be a little more reasonable and easy on the eyes of the the gamers who don't play as often, or yeah, pretty much
Not
it.
terminally online like a lot of us.
Yeah,
kind of review
much.
bombing the Elden Ring
Casual.
DLC because it was too hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just have mechanics, aesthetics, functionality, and then just have another tab called other, and then you just state your grievances there or whatever.
All right, so well said, gents. Appreciate the episode. For those listening, appreciate your viewership, and if you made it this far, thank you very much. Gonna do a little housekeeping, and then we're gonna head home. So if you enjoyed this content, leave a subscription. Hit the subscribe button and leave a comment down below. Give us a like or dislike if you enjoyed the conversation. We'd love to hear back from you. Reading the comments is one of my favorite things about kind of managing the YouTube channel and producing these episodes. Negative or positive comments, I enjoy reading them either way, quite frankly. Genuinely, if I get negative comments, I'm actually kind of excited to read it. So anyway, so if you're interested in this kind of content, definitely subscribe. We produce episodes like this every single Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern. We've been doing this for almost 3 years. Actually, 3 years now. We're in almost 3 years, and in a few weeks that'll make our 3-year anniversary of podcasting. So you know, we do this for fun. We don't, trust me, we get nothing monetarily doing this. You could tell by looking at our view count and subscriber count. It's not the case at all. We don't do it for money. We just do it kind of for fun. And it's a good reason to hang out with the boys and talk about certain gaming things that we maybe don't get to engage too much on. So yeah, if you want to look at the articles mentioned, they're going to be linked in the description down below. You could give that a look and a read for yourself. Also, check out our other content. We have like 2-minute reviews on various games we've played, unboxing videos. I think there's some like stream VODs as well on the channel, so you could check that out as well. Check the description down below for all of our social media links. We have a presence on Facebook, Twitter, or X, Instagram. There's a Discord that we have as well. And Mr. Esoteric runs the Twitch channel, the main channel on Twitch. He streams 2 to 3 times a week, and he plays all sorts of different types of games. So definitely check him out, give him a follow, and yeah, hopefully that's content you enjoy as well. So with that being said, everybody have a great day. We'll see you next week.
Take it easy.
Till next time.